Hi everyone, it's me again, and Gus is in his cone era, so he will be hanging out with me today because I don't want him running around with that thing because he bumps it into my furniture and breaks stuff. Today we're going to really briefly just talk about Colleen Ballinger's return because it was requested when I said, what do I talk about on the internet? And it was pretty much the only reply that I had. So besides this brief thing about Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens fighting, which I'll mess with a little bit later. Anyway, so that's all we're going to be talking about today. First, links, socials, way to support the channel, including any affiliate links, Patreon and YouTube members, all down below. Thank you to my members and patrons that are currently with me right now. Names on the screen. So this is going to be a very quick, brief video. I am researching actively a different video, my next, the Rhetoric of, actually, because I will be done my internship very soon, so I'll have actual time to do so. Also, random aside, look at this cup that I got from Marshall's. I'm just happy about this. So let's just get right into the discussion of the return. Returning again on the same channel that the ukulele apology video was on November 18th, 2023. Colleen Ballinger came back from a several-month-long break with a video titled Fall Vlog. In this vlog, it opens up with a sort of half-assed apology regarding the both ukulele video and the events that had occurred in debacle with Adam McIntyre, Becky, and Oliver, and Johnny to a certain degree. So with all of that happening, however, most of the apology related to not the things that happened. There was a very brief comment about it, rather sorry about an inappropriateness, not directly addressing anyone or anything that actually happened.
Over the last 15 years of my career, there have been moments where I was immature and inappropriate with some of my comedy, and there were times when I did not put enough thought into some of my fan interactions, and because of that behavior, people got hurt, and I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt anybody, but it's clear that I did, and I feel so terrible about that. So I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that I create a positive, kind, inclusive, safe space online with my content. And if you want to be a part of my journey online, I would love to have you, and if not, I completely understand.
But also more so addressing a sorriness for not being as active on social media because, and I quote, all I've been doing is going to therapy and hanging out with my kids.
I also feel like there's probably people who are disappointed or feel abandoned by me because of my silence over the last few months. And I'm so sorry about that as well. I needed to take time to make sure I was listening and learning as much as possible. And I also needed to get the help that I needed to be okay. I'm a mom first and foremost before anything else. And I needed to take care of my kids. So I do not expect anyone to welcome me back with open arms. I don't expect to change anyone's mind with this video. I just wanted to come on here and say that I'm sorry, and I wanted to try to show people that it's possible for someone to grow and learn and be better after making mistakes many years ago. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to vlog again, and today I'm just going to film my day and share some simple happy moments. And sorry I've been gone for so long. I've really missed this. I've missed talking to everyone every single day. Obviously, the last video that I posted on here, it's really embarrassing, to say the least.
What is interesting with this is just her actions in the video, the way the jokes that she makes, the way that she carries herself seems very similar, just slightly more timid, maybe. I feel like if you took one of her other vlogs and overlaid it with this one, getting rid of the intro, it would be the same. I guess except for the difference that she's not like shoving the camera in the face of her children. This time, we'll see how long that takes to return, mind you. With this, Colleen just sits in her little house and goes through each of her little Halloween decorations, shows the pajamas from her kids, shows the creek footage that she had. She said that her therapist wanted her to keep recording videos, but not necessarily uploading them while she was taking her break. And I think the thing that centers with this, which is interesting, is this fixation on self-victimization that carried through from that ukulele video and from any criticism that she faced in the past. It's so much like, I've been crying, things have been really hard for me, never ever reflecting on imagining how things would have gone for other people, because for once, to a certain extent, to a certain degree, the victims were sided with in this context. And Colleen, meaning in this case, has to be forward facing of that sort of victim complex. And the thing with this is that when you act in this way and you perpetuate yourself as a victim, there is a cycle that continues. So on the screen, I have referred to the STAR, which is Strategies for Trauma Awareness and Resilience. This is the victim versus aggressor cycle. So I have it on screen right now. I'm actually going to put it as the whole frame so you can really take a good look at this. This I saw in a book that I had for restorative justice in university, but it's also something that's pretty common when we're talking about trauma and aggression in this context. So there is the aggressor cycle, and I want to go through each one of these, and then I'm going to discuss which ones are being applied through this video. So, responding to social and cultural pressures, pride, deciding to pursue own needs even at expenses of others, viewing violence as redemptive, dehumanizing the other, developing good versus evil narrative, experiencing unmet needs for safety, justice, shame, humiliation, fear, seeing self/group as victims, embracing us versus them mentality, attacking the name of self-defense, justice, or honor, and creating sustained injustice structures and systems. So that is the aggressor cycle. And in this, there is repetitive conflict, bullying, blaming others, criminal activity, domestic violence, and child abuse. Then there is the what's called victim cycle, acting in, which is the changes and things that occur to the people that are facing these sorts of violence. Traumatic events and acts of violence, physiological changes, fight, flight, freeze, shock, injury, fear, denial, powerlessness, helpless feelings, suppression of grief and fears, anger, rage, spiritual questioning, loss of meaning, survival guilt, shame, and humiliation, realization of loss, panic, and anxieties, fantasies of revenge or needing for justice, re-experiencing events, intrusive thoughts, avoiding reminders, and hypervigilance. If we begin with the aggressor cycle, responding to social and cultural pressures. If you think about this in the context of YouTube as a platform and the demands that come forth on YouTube as a platform, the therapy thing is big. And I don't want to criticize, I'm not criticizing her for getting therapy. I want to say that so forward with it because therapy, good. Therapy, always good. Get therapy, it's good. However, when you're constantly throwing that out in your video, random tidbits to kind of be like, oh, all I've done is felt shame for what I've done, but I won't address what I've actually done, won't address in what ways I felt shame, won't address the victims directly, but rather make it as sort of a victim complex, which is the next section, seeing self/group as victims, embracing us versus them mentality, which is the entire ukulele video for one. But for another is she talks about in the apology, and I'll put the clip in now as well, this sort of, I can't control what people say about me online.
I am not a perfect person, and there are plenty of things in my past that I wish I could go back and redo and fix and change. I don't have control over any of that, and I don't have control over the things people say about me. I only have control over my actions moving forward.
That's that sort of us are gonna, we, the Colleen's Weenies, I don't know what her, that's the group chat, right? Or so, kind of like that. I don't know what her fan base is called. Anyway, the Colleen Ballinger adores. It's them and Colleen versus those that speak negatively towards Colleen. Then we have things such as the developing good versus evil narrative. That's the ukulele apology in this context. And while she calls it embarrassing and says that she was mad and that it was slightly inappropriate, there is no addressing of to what context that was inappropriate and to what degree that was inappropriate. And realistically, if you thought it was inappropriate, it is currently 1:52 p.m. on November 19th. This will be a very quick edit for me because this is very short and more of a just talking video. As of November 19th at 1:53 p.m., this so-called inappropriate video, that is her most popular video on the channel by far, like by 5 million views, is still up. I took a super brief break really quick while I was filming to skim a bit of Adam McIntyre's video that has actually come out since I started recording this video, called Colleen Ballinger Hasn't Changed bar fall vlog. It's very interesting because he brings up a couple points, some of them that I had just made actually, weirdly enough, but another one that I forgot to mention as well. Two things. One, you have as a content creator who is monetized for the most part, depending on obviously the volume of your channel. If you have a manager, etc., that you have a 6-month window uploading before they'll remove your monetization. Again, this depends on the volume, like how big your channel is. It depends on if there's a deal that's been made. Because let's say you are somebody who makes like videos that are very, very long between them and take a very long time to make, there is a level of activity that needs to be maintained. Anyway, so that's one proponent of that whole thing. Second off, it is right now the last 10 days of November. All of you know December is for juice and content, me included, because I just worked an unpaid internship for 3 months. But anyway, you have your December AdSense rolling in. And the November's is good too. I want to preface with that also. I think this is something that a lot of people don't mention. Like, I've had pretty stagnant performance the last 4 or 5 months or so, which has been, you know, a little bit shattering to the ego, but I digress. And this month, I've already made like $400 or $500 more just arbitrarily. Everything's the same. So it's genuinely just the boost in the algorithm based on the AdSense that's coming up. So in that context, remember that as well. So it's already higher. So what she's doing now is she's one, putting this in at a time where it is already higher, and two, gearing up for regular upload for Vlogmas, which starts in about 11 days from now. This also gives her the opportunity to pre-film a little bit, get out a little bit more kind of content built up for December, so that she can kind of just boil it down to like a smooth transition in or a slow transition back, because I was villainized so badly on the internet. So we go back to the cycle, for example. There is dehumanizing the other. Adam McIntyre talks about this in his video, that Colleen was going into other people's DMs and saying that Adam was a liar. She was really disrespectful towards his mother, someone who he values very deeply. Also, if we go back to the ukulele video, the fart joke comment regarding Becky, that is dehumanization at its core. You have desiring to pursue own needs even at expense of others. This is the returning back to the juicer content months for the big money months, despite the fact that she's never actually directly apologized to Adam, Becky, Oliver, many other victims as well. And if we go into the victim cycle as well, right? There have been, and I've noticed just from Twitter, looking at the responses of some of the victims on the kind of discourse around the video coming out. Now, some of this was tweeted on private accounts, so I'm not going to obviously put those on there, because Becky and I follow each other on private, like alts or whatever. Regardless, I'll voice some of the tones that were present, okay? There was this, and even not even specific actually to her private, I'm not even going to do that, but the general consensus of the victims in the response to this whole thing has been one that is very shocked, and a sense of humiliation and this like almost fear that has come up throughout this whole thing, which is a part of the cycle referred to specifically as the, well, first off, shock, injury, no injury in this case, but shock, fear, denial, specifically the helplessness and powerlessness feeling. Because despite the fact that people have made dozens of videos, people have pushed very, very hard for some like actual tangible repercussions to happen, nothing's happened. There is also a context of shame and humiliation, not somewhat survival guilt, not necessarily in too much in this context, but even then there has been, given the tension with Johnny, a bit of a push and pull of an internalization of the process a little bit. In the context of restorative justice and cycles of violence and things like that, this isn't 100% my specialization. This is more so something for social workers. I did study this in my undergraduate, and also I've done a master's. I'm like a week out from finishing the master's in education, and I focused on intersections and things like that. And so this is something that does kind of lie into that whole thing. I just kind of wanted to state that because I didn't preface that before of why I wanted to bring this up. There is also this context of like fantasies of revenge and this need for justice. I know Becky, for example, was essentially immediately calling for like Colleen's deplatforming. Also, the things with these cycles is the acting in cycle of the victims. It's not like I'm not blaming them for having these feelings, and neither is the intention of this cycle. This is just something that typically results from these sorts of strenuous interactions and painful interactions that these people have to have. The re-experiencing events is something that Adam does a lot. I've already noticed in the few minutes that I've watched in this video. There has been a lot of reliving in this process, and Swoop discusses this reliving through her interviews with the victims. Adam discusses this reliving that's had to occur a lot, specifically when he becomes a bit emotional on live stream. Segue quickly to the society we live in, but the fact that on the internet that this has to be such a huge issue to have those sorts of feelings is shameful, I feel like, to the context of being able to support one another in our progress and through getting out of the cycles of violence, because realistically, you don't want to continuously exist in these cycles of violence. Rather, you want to move into what's called the restorative practices, or your more positive feedbacks and restorative justice intersections. Things like victim reparation, reconciliation, and community growth, and other things such as kind of youth restoration in their sort of beliefs. All of it has to come together. That's the other thing with restorative justice in particular. If I'm looking over a little bit, it's because I have my diagrams and things up here so I can reference them in real time properly. If you see, I'll put in this new one. See how this one, instead of being shaped kind of like a Venn diagram, not quite because they don't quite overlap, but like two circles, this one's kind of shaped like a conch shell, because you want to break, because before it's going like this, right? It's just two circles going like this, and you're stuck in these cycles and it never seems to end. But then once you break out, you can get outside and start to move into a new set of cycles that are more restorative and more positive. That is where you want to go. So there's your things like your acknowledgement from your victimizer, a reconnection between either the one who victimizes people in society or themselves and the victim. That depends on the context, willingness, and desire of the victim in particular. Transforming conflict and seeing real tangible solutions, which does feed into a little bit of the cycle context of needing justice and feeling that sort of need for revenge. But the difference is that when you have, you dissolve that needing for revenge and you see the justice in the sense of a creation of a positive result rather than just explosion of anger. That is the context I have for the restorative justice, but that's something that I want to discuss because I never want to just keep bringing in the same sort of critiques and processes and comments that everybody else has. And I think that and I wanted to bring it into a field of study that is very serious and one that is very applicable. Like actually when the chart that I'm pulling up is from a website where the article is actually relating to incidences that happen in particularly American high schools that involve certain loose regulations around particular weapons, okay? So that's where the cycles is used and applied to in the context of the article that I pulled it from, but it's showing that when there is real actual trauma, real victims, and real perpetuated cycles of violence, that you can see how it is applied and you can break down the context of it to even sort of solidify the feeling of the victims and the reality that they're facing. So I'm just trying to kind of bring in how I'm viewing a lot of these situations. I never bring in professional. I wanted to address something too from a couple of other videos and stuff, which frustrated me a little bit, but I never bring in professional contexts or cited works or anything like that as a way of like patting myself on the back. I think I'm trying to show you that the internet stuff is real life and I'm applying it to professional contexts that happen in real life to show that these behaviors I'm criticizing are because if you try to do that anywhere else, it's unacceptable and the repercussions are real, whether that be online or in quote unquote like kind of real life outside of the internet. So that's the only reason I'm applying these things. This context of needing to pat myself on the back or whatever is kind of just trying to dilute the necessity, I think, of these practices and also the meaningfulness around, because it doesn't have to be me who does it. I don't need it to be me who's the only one. All I'm trying to do is like plant seeds. And even if one of the victims comes across this video, I would even applaud, or not necessarily applaud, but encourage a little bit maybe to look into perhaps practices. Practices of restorative justice, unfortunately, actually do require that the victimizer do something, which in this case, it doesn't seem viable. But there are other processes in restorative justice that can be a bit more internal. You do tend to need to involve the other party, but I wanted to show how these cycles have been perpetuated through this lack of involvement, lack of seriousness, and lack of facing these things that Colleen has actually done. That's what I wanted to say with that. With that, I will end the video here. Link sources, ways to support the channel, including YouTube memberships, Patreon, Amazon wishlist, all that fun stuff, all down below, along with an email to suggest content or just talk to me, whatever. If I don't, I reply sometimes I don't, I forget about them, but I do read every single one of them. And yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing day. And RE, the Squishmallows really quick. I don't know what I'm going to do yet because I have seen a bit of discourse online about the sort of anti-Palestinian sentiments coming from the CEO of the Squishmallow people. So thing is that when it's like your whole thing, I don't really know how to approach that yet. So I will TLDR on that one. Or not TLDR. Give me time on that one for now. I'm just going to stop, I guess, doing the Squish Gang is present thing and see where this goes. Anyway, have an amazing day, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
Have you ever been hurt so bad you had to listen to the Black Eyed Peas to get over it?
From Spotify. When the days are
Alexa, stop! That was the wrong song.